Wichita's metaphysical exploration of Holy Week. So, this metaphysical exploration of Holy Week is really just a continuation from Sunday morning when we talked about Palm Sunday and what that meant in our metaphysical understanding. Hi, my name is Reverend Samantha Jones, and I am excited to bring you information about Maundy Thursday. That's the day that we are here today. This is the day that Jesus would have been celebrating the Last Supper, Passover with his disciples. And of course, it's also when he would have been going to pray in the Garden of Gethsemane. So let's get into this and what it means as we look at it metaphysically. So first, the Passover, of course, as we know, that's a carryover from the Hebrew scriptures, but it's really a feast that represents the movement from lower sense consciousness, or the things that we experience here in our physical being, and moving into a higher consciousness of our spiritual awareness, our awareness of the divine presence and principle that many call God. And so here we are. This Passover is moving us into ideas of wholeness and oneness rather than ideas of separation. And so part of this Passover is what is known as the Last Supper. This is when Jesus and his disciples share bread and food and wine, and they are together really sharing in the revelry of this moment, even though all of them are keenly aware that there is some sort of storm brewing, right? Jesus has already been saying that someone's going to be betraying me, someone's going to be denying me. And so we know that something's happening. So there's some representations here within these scriptures. And this is bread. Bread represents the body of Christ, the spirit, right? It's the non-physical and not yet formed substance within our awareness. So it's the non-physical substance of God that's not yet formed. And then we move into the wine. The wine in the first communion is seen as the blood of life, the life of the vine. So this is the actual movement of this fluidity of spirit being able to move into the understanding, the greater awareness of this divine presence that we call the Christ. So communion, we do this whenever we consume, whenever we take part in the word of life, the word of truth, when we decide to start following the example that Jesus Christ showed us and follow the teachings that he gave us, not the teachings that we've created from what we think, but the teachings from what Jesus has actually said and lived in his experience. And so then there's finally this new covenant. This new covenant is the end of this Last Supper. And so the new covenant is the ultimate promise of God, this divine principle, this substance, or you may even call it the unconditional love. It's the new covenant is the ultimate promise of God, the promise of spiritual freedom. And then that's the spiritual freedom found in the Christ. So this is what Jesus demonstrated when he came to a full realization of the Christ presence within himself, right? So then we move on. We're going to be looking at the Garden of Gethsemane. So there's a lot here. There's so much information in all of these scriptures, and these are really exploring Matthew chapter 26, starting at verse 17 and going all the way through to verse 46. And this is when he goes to the garden and he is really asking God, is there any other way? Is there any other way? Because you've got to think, if you were in that position as a human person, as a human being, it would be something that you would have to ask, wouldn't it? You would have to say, do I have to hang? Do I have to be in this painful physical experience? And finally, Jesus comes to the point of saying, it's your will. I will do what I'm called to do within my own inner guidance. And so he went to pray for guidance that was needed, but he calls upon the 12 powers. So the 12 disciples each represent one of the 12 faculties of spirit identified by Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of the Unity movement. So these 12 faculties of spirit are faculties that each one of us possess naturally. And so these are things like faith, wisdom, strength, love, life, and judgment. And the list goes on, but what he brings with him, he calls upon Peter and these other 3 disciples to come and be with him. So he's focusing on Peter is faith. We have love as John came to be with him. And then he's got this discernment, this judgment that has been brought forward as well in the 3rd disciple. So they're calling upon these, and we can use this as a guide that we are calling upon these faculties whenever we meet a challenge, whenever we're praying to God, like, does it have to be this way? Does it have to be this way? Do I have to do this? Do I have to stay at this job? Do I have to stay in this relationship? Do I have to make these hard choices in life? And bring with you faith, love, and discernment. And let them support you in your processing of awareness through this prayer. Finally, he says, as he comes back and discovers that some of the disciples had slept rather than keeping watch, he says, the spirit is willing, the flesh is weak. And I had heard that so many times as a child, and I often wondered, what does that really mean? And I love this metaphysical interpretation. It refers to the sense consciousness, again, this body, this humanity that we are, and it's being motivated by the spirit, that the spirit, our inner being, our inner divinity, is willing to make changes, is willing to do what needs to be done to shift into new understanding. But sometimes our humanity gets in the way. Sometimes our humanity will cause difficulties. And I had to ask myself, what does that mean for me? How can I relate that to the people that I'm connecting with? Well, what it means to me is that when I say that I am gung-ho, ready to go, I'm going to keep everything organized on my bookshelf, right? You can see it's not right now, right? The spirit is willing and excited, but somehow this human experience interferes. So it's going back to the garden again, going back with faith, love, and discernment, being able to say that it's okay, I've got this, I know that this is mine to do, so I'm going to recenter, regroup, and make it happen. And then we go back and we begin again. And so, of course, tomorrow we'll be exploring even more metaphysical interpretation of the day of crucifixion, Good Friday. So we'll be looking at Judas's betrayal. We'll be looking at Jesus going through the process of being judged and finally on the cross and in his crucifixion. So we have much to talk about. I'm excited to share this with you, and I hope that this is helpful. Have a wonderful day. If you took value from this offering, please do two things for me. Number one, share it, comment on it, share it with the people in your life that you think could use this perspective. And number two, if you would be so kind as to follow that link up in the corner or the link down below in the description to share a love offering to support this program and all the programs here at Unity of Wichita that are focused on inspiring spiritual transformation. So until then, we'll see you tomorrow. And I hope if you're local, you can come see us here at Unity of Wichita on Easter Sunday for a day of transformation. Have a great one. And remember, faith, love, and discernment.